Mate, we get every guest to finish this sentence. Answer it any way you like. Life is ...
Life is. Mate, I don't want to sit here and espouse these things and act like this all came to my brain. It's not really original. This is my lovely partner, Nikki, was the one who taught me this. But life is a garden. It's not a building. You don't just build it and sit back and go, that's fine. It'll keep growing and keep going. You got to trim it back and keep going. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just, it doesn't stop. So there's no point in thinking it'll stop for you.
No one tells you what you're supposed to do. Where we're going, what you're doing's up to me and you.
Dave Thornton is a big-hearted Aussie comedian that has the rare gift of finding the comedy gold in the everyday. Whether it's as a guest on the project, on a morning radio session, or on a national tour spreading his truth, people relate to and connect with Dave Thornton. Dave, great to have you on the Inside Sessions, mate.
Gee, Scott, it's already good to be here, mate, with that kind of introduction. Were you like this as a coach? Was that what you do with all your players? I would love that.
You got to build confidence. But I was an admirer of a lot of your work, particularly Cheap Seats with Bob Murphy. I loved that. And unfortunately, I think it was about 12 episodes. I'd love, that I wish it was still going. But, mate, you do have a gift. I mean, you look at life and you're able to sort of make it really relatable. Anyone in your audience just connects with you. Has that always been the case?
I mean, on the Cheap Seats too, mate, I'll tell you, Murph and I like to look at it like it's the Faulty Towers of podcasts. We only did 11 or something. And Murph got a real job, so that's why we're not doing that anymore. But, mate, I don't know. It's funny, the more you get into comedy, the more you can overthink things. And I think sometimes with comedy for me, I got into it because I would see my mates, my dad with his mates all having a laugh on a weekend, and you're like, well, that looks like fun. So when people say with comedy, is it relatable that you do? You're like, yeah, well, you hope to make everyone laugh about the same thing, don't you? Yeah. I guess that's why I've always done that. And, just, mate, a very insecure personality trait to want everyone in the room to like you. That's
is that the motivation? I mean, I'm interested, I always look at comedians, and clearly you got to be sharp to be a comedian. That goes without saying, but there's this craziness, almost insanity and masochistic type life choice to want to be a comedian. Yeah. What brought you to the table? Where was that moment? Was it just an organic sort of evolution, or you just made a real decision at some point and go, well, this is the career that I want to go down?
I mean, I guess performing's in my blood, Scotty. My grandfather, he was in an orchestral band back in England. Yep. And my father, he fronted a band, mainly in Geelong, where I grew up. So I kind of joke that obviously the genetics are slowly watering out. Like they had actual musical talent. I'm a comedian. I don't know what my kids are going to turn into, real estate agents or something. But then, but mate, I think, I was a bit reticent to perform like when I was younger, when I was in high school and things like that. I went to Belmont High School in Geelong, and it was a very musical school. Yeah. And I think I'm too cynical for musicals, mate. There's nothing against musicals, but it's all very overt, and you know.
Did you give it a go? Did you try and follow the pathway?
Nah, I didn't. I just couldn't stand it because there's almost and please, if anyone is into musicals, I don't mean this as a dig, but it's probably going to come across as that. It's almost very insincere. In a musical, something happens dramatic, and then what do you know? Everyone's on their toes, flashing their hands around. I'm like, this doesn't seem dramatic at all. And not to get too grim too early in your podcast, mate, but my father passed away when I was 19, and he was in a band. He also ran a cleaning company. So they're two probably polar opposite things in his life. But he never really liked the cleaning company, and he had bad sciatica, and it was successful, but he just, I could tell he hated it, couldn't wait to get retired. And then he retired, and 4 years later he passed away. And it just dawned on me that you can do something pretty miserable for your entire life, hope to get over it, finish it, retire and enjoy your life. And then what do you know? So I'm not saying that happened overnight, but then it just gave me the reason, gave me the impetus to think, life's finite. So if I don't do what I want to do, because even my partner does say to me, she says, you don't take risks. I'm not a risk taker. I'm not a hedonistic person, but this is the one thing in my life where I go, you're right. It's stupid. It's really stupid to get up in front of a room full of people and go, I'm going to be funny, especially a room full of Australians, right?
Yeah, that is a different segment of a global audience, there's no doubt. You mentioned family, you mentioned your dad, his impact, just, I'm always fascinated with, role models and, clearly his pathway in some ways affected yours. Of
course. I think my father, he still strikes a long shadow in my life, just because I think my father he'd always work very hard Monday to Friday, and then it was on. He's Friday afternoon, it was like, all right, tools down. We're families, but we're not really. Like, we're all going to have fun. My mates are going to come round. You try and entertain yourself. The structure was out the window and everyone was having a good time. And I think that's just how I became a comedian. Because I was like, Friday to Sunday seems a lot more fun than Monday to Friday does.
Yeah.
And so I think through that, and also, not to get too technical in it all, but laughter is a release point. It means someone has enjoyed the situation and enjoyed what it is. And I think that's the part I enjoyed in it. When people are laughing, you're like, oh, okay, well, then there's no tension around. Everyone's having fun. And I mean, it can be manipulated. I don't want to act like that's all altruistic. Sometimes there is an ego involved that you think, I'm going to be the one that makes people laugh. But it is a fun energy to be a part of. And so I guess now I've spent a better part of my adult life trying to chase it.
Oh, I reckon ego is a part of any elite performer's sort of background or repertoire, whether it's a sport person or politician or whatever. I think ego cops a bad rap. It has to be a part of an elite performer's arsenal, I think. So it doesn't surprise me that ego's wrapped up in comedic performance.
We are extremely competitive, Scott. Like, I have noticed as I've gone along.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of comedians, if you get them in a competitive situation, you'd be surprised.
Fantastic. The role of comedy, you sort of touched on it there, but alleviates pressure. Is it more important than ever right now? I mean, we've gone through an unbelievable period, for obvious reasons, bushfires, pandemics, economic crisis. I mean, it's just incredible to even put all those three things in the same sentence. Does comedy have more of a role to play, or a more important role to play now?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny with comedy because there's a whole breadth of it. Like, if you've seen comedians that are quite silly, and to the comedians that can be quite political. So, I mean, when you say it breaks tension, sometimes it even creates tension because, when barbs and jokes are thrown across, someone can be insulted. And we all know, I mean, I don't want to go down that road of, it's a PC world and whatnot. But, I mean, we're just living in a global village now. So, I mean, you do have to be careful of what you're saying. I'm fine with that. But then, you need to laugh. You need some brevity in it all. I mean, it is quite hard. I mean, once this global pandemic, mate, I don't know about you, but there were moments I had to limit the news to myself. I had to, you have to remember your humanity, because if you get all the world's news thrown into your skull and it just sits there, and a lot of it you can't do anything about.
Yeah.
And so you need that levity. I've got to remind myself sometimes to smile and to actually enjoy it. You think, how can a comedian be so down? But you're like, oh, well, I guess when things like this happen, it's human nature.
Look, I don't want to get too deep and heavy early, obviously, but I mean, what's your take on this period of history? I mean, to have those things backed up against each other, is one of them would have been enough. Bushfire crisis, pandemic, there's concerns now over the economy. What there's got to be some take homes out of all of this, as we all sort of reflect on the time. What's your sort of perspective on it all, and how do you put that in perspective?
I always feel, mate, there's a humanity that comes through it, because on a larger scale, those things are happening. But I think on the smaller scale, as in your neighbourhood, and I know it's a thing you guys talk about there at your foundation, your tribe, your immediate tribe, that's always can be something that you can focus on. Like they always talk about the bunkers in London when World War II was happening. So if you're hiding in a bunker, it didn't matter which social structure you were sitting at. You could be wearing top hats and at the right end of town, or you can be a plumber digging through literal shit. But if you're in that bunker, we're all quiet and we're all trying to get through this together. And I think when these things happen, you kind of have to just keep it on that ground level, that. And I think that's why I do like stand-up, mate, because it's just what's happening in that room right now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just what's happening within that little circle. And that's not to say you're making jokes about everyone on the outside. It's just that there is an emotion and a vibe within that room. And during this pandemic, like, mate, I've gotten to know my neighbours because I've got little kids. I've got a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old, and we've got neighbours with kids the same age. And when you were just in that little clique and you weren't looking outside because we couldn't, because you literally couldn't travel outside. You couldn't go outside of it. It was actually in some ways quite enjoyable.
Let's dig into your tribe, your closest tribe. Those 2 girls that you've just mentioned. What's fatherhood been like? I've got 3 boys who are a little bit older than that, sort of 10 through to 16. My wife and I always joke that no one really tells you everything before you get into parenthood. It's almost like it's this secret where, it's fantastic and it's great, and it is. But no one ever gives you all the challenging downside, or if that's the one way to describe it. How have you found it? What have you learnt? How's it impacted you?
I mean, initially, the most visceral thing that comes to my mind, and I don't want to swear on your podcast, but it is fucking tiring. That's what it is. And especially when they're that age. I'm good mates with Tommy Little, and who's, he's been, he's in relationships, but he's a single man and he's living that life. And he did say to me last week, he goes, I feel like every mate of mine who's got kids just rattles off all the things that are going wrong, but then goes, but I love them. Like, and I said, look, it's not just an asterisk at the end. I said, you love them. You've never had anything in your life where you've loved that more than you've probably loved yourself. And it's just very extreme, isn't it? It's very extreme. Like, I've had moments where you like, I am in love with them, but there's moments you're so in love where it's like almost crippling. Like, you look at the girls get out of the bath and they'll play in the lounge room and you're just having fun and you're tickling them and all this, and you're just like, oh, this is unbelievable. But then, 2 a.m, one of them's up screaming for 2 hours. You're like, well, this is the complete opposite of that. This is a lot.
Have you had? I reckon there's this phenomenon that occurs once you become a parent, where and maybe more so for men than women. I'm not sure, but most males I know probably didn't cry too much throughout their journey until they've had kids, and then it just seems like there's this. I don't know, a stronger tap into a male's emotions. I've had more tears since I've had kids. Have you felt any of that sort of emotional impact now that you've got a brood to look after?
Mate, of course. And I'm not dismissing again the tiredness. That's always going to make anyone cry a little easier. Yeah, but of course, mate. Again, it's very extreme. I remember one moment was she was then 2 years old. I was in Adelaide, and when we go on tour, we quite often do festivals. So you do Adelaide Fringe Festival, it's usually where you start, and then Brisbane has a comedy festival, then Melbourne, Sydney. So you're touring for 4 months, maybe. And Yana had just been born. She was only 3 months old. And so the whole family came across to Adelaide, and my mum came. And the first night there, Freddie, who I said was only 2, she picked up we just made some teas, and they were sitting on a table at this Airbnb, and she just picked up, because she had an empty cup, and she was saying, oh, Daddy, I'm drinking tea. And I was like, oh, good on you, mate. But then we just put a new brew on. She picked it up and then just spilled it all over her arm and all over her chest. And I was like, oh, Jesus. And we just had an all-nighter in the children's ward at Adelaide and, all that stuff. And it was a couple of nights. And then I had to perform the next night. And I was just like a brand new show, and I was just, my head was all over the shop. But it was highly emotional, mate, because I'd spent the night there. I was so worried about her. And she's fine now, to be honest. The health system here in this country is amazing. And it fixed her all up, and she's really good. And there's only a couple little things on her arm now, but that's to all the help of the emergency services and whatever. But, mate, the extremity of going, like, you're crying that night, and then I'm going to go do my job, which my job is holding court.
That's ridiculously challenging.
And I get to the end of the show, and I had to fight it myself, just because it's just jokes and whatever. And I thought, they don't want this bloke just going, ladies and gentlemen, it's just failed me so much. But they don't want to know. but that's what it pushes you to, those extremities and those worries and things like that.
No doubt. Best moment, worst moment. I'm sure there's so much talk about resilience, I guess, now around, everyone's needing to show resilience in so many different ways. I think comedians probably have to show it, throughout their career in so many different ways. Best moment as a comedian, worst moment as a comedian.
I mean, immediately a lot of worst moments got to come to the fore. You can't help.
Yeah.
Best moments. I'm trying to think. Like, there's so many fun moments I've had. I've been quite lucky like that. I do remember actually one time, the project, they'd called me up out of nowhere and said, "Can you come on tonight? We've got Malcolm Turnbull was the Prime Minister at the time. He's going to be on the show." And I was like, Jesus, okay. I haven't been on the project for a couple of years, to be honest. And then I was like, okay, and we get there and I'm sitting on the desk next to the PM thinking, oh, shit. And Waleed's next to me and he's prying him. At the time, the new Snowy Hydro scheme had been put on. And
yep.
I'm actually reading Malcolm's book now. He seems like a good dude, but does know how to talk, mate. And
he loves it, doesn't he?
He's sitting there and he also, the way he just, he's like, water is 2 pieces of hydrogen, 1 piece of oxygen. He's going on and you're like, oh, okay. And in my ear, because it's live, they're all going, oh, he's going on too much, he's going on too much. And then I got him, I actually made a joke and he laughed. And it's so funny in a comedian's mind. I was like, wow, I made the Prime Minister laugh. How good's this? We finished the show and Waleed's gone, I never got to the questions I wanted to get to him. And he was fair enough annoyed because he's a reporter. Yeah. When this monkey's just like, no, I made him laugh. I reckon I've done my job. I'm pretty good. And the country probably wanted all those answers, but I was really happy with myself.
Perfect.
But things like that, sometimes it's unbelievable. You're meeting people and going, how did it get to this? Being in Edinburgh Comedy Festival and have great comedians come to your show and I really enjoyed that. That blew my mind apart. I remember one time I got a 5-star review from the Scotsman, which is good, but sometimes that's a poison chalice, mate, because everyone who turns up next time has their arms crossed going, so this is perfect comedy, is it?
Yeah. Make a rod for your own back. Does it, when you're for an athlete, footy player, golfer, whatever it might be, we talk about being in the flow, in that moment where it's subconscious performance, where you're not really having to think about it. Is that what it feels like for a comedian when you've really got an audience, you know that you're with them, they're with you? Is it easy at that point, or is it still just making it look easy?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's a bit of fake it till you make it, mate. I know what you're talking about. There has been moments where you just think this is unbelievable. And the hard trick is the next night, especially if you're doing a festival, to not hold that audience accountable for not being the cracking audience that there was the night before. Because we do rely so much on an audience, arguably more than most other performers, because like musos, they want to get something back, don't get me wrong, but I even say to musos, even at a corporate gig, they could play in the background because music can still exist. If everyone's talking, I'm a man who's on his own looking insane on a stage, and so I need the audience, and the audience needs to give me something back. They're a huge part. I've been told it's like they're a dance partner. You're the one leading the dance, but if they don't want to dance with you, you are in trouble.
That's hard.
And mate, I'll tell you a story. This is one of the worst ones. Just because how subtle it was. I was in Edinburgh. First year there, and mate, Edinburgh Fringe Festival is unbelievable. Takes over the whole city, runs for a month. There's not just comedy. There's all these performance spaces. They put out a catalogue that's about as thick as the old white pages of just performers. You're like, how will I stick out in this? I had about 40 people maybe in the audience, and I was performing. It's an hour show. 20 minutes in, no one's laughing but about 3 people. 3 people are right into it. They're up the back, but everyone else, it's almost like they hated me. Like they were just dead silent. I'm like, this is killing. You can't pull a ripcord either. I guess it's like a bad game of footy. Like you can't at half time go, we'll call it, yeah?
I'm done.
Yeah. And we're there. I drop a joke. I thought it was a pretty good joke. The 3 people laughed, and then through the silence of the room, it's like this spokesperson, just because it's all dark from where I see it, leaned across to those people, and I could hear them just go, shh, and quieten their laughing down, as if stop encouraging him. Like we're here to break his hopes and dreams. Because it wasn't even cutting. It was more like, come on, mate, let's not encourage this bloke. He really needs to stop this and figure out what he needs to do with his life. And mate, I'd flown the other side of the world. I'd had ambitions, I guess, to try and make something of it and try and improve as a comedian. And he's like, you have broken me.
Are there any, hecklers go hand in hand with comedy? Have you had any moments? How do you handle a heckler?
Oh, I mean, I do say this to new comedians, mate, where I almost say, just stop everything and go, sorry, what did you say? Because once silence hits a heckler, it's a pretty brave person who, with the same gusto, will go, you're shit. Once it's all silent, they'll go, I've regretted everything I just said. And, I guess there's a power structure there where you're up on stage, but you can still get owned. Don't get me wrong. There's still some funny stuff. I reckon the worst one I had wasn't even in the comedy room, mate. When I was starting off from breakfast radio, getting up that early for a comedian was killing me. And I used to live in St Kilda. After the show had finished, I'm almost walking around the haze during the day. I couldn't put myself back together. And a guy drove past me and just slowed down, and he went, not funny, and then just drove off.
That was it.
And I was like half asleep, walking down the street going, I just need a rest. I didn't know who he was. Still to this day, I don't know who he was. I was like, Jesus, that hurts.
Yeah, that is legitimately a drive-by. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, you might have copped it in your footy career. Isn't it hard when just random people have a hatred for you and you're like, whoa, I'm just trying to play a game. Or for me, I'm like, I'm just trying to tell jokes. But people are like, nah, he needs to know how shit he is.
Yeah, one moment, 18 years of age, Victoria Park, playing for the West Coast Eagles, taking on the Pies, tribal, suburban sort of feel, Ball crosses the boundary line and I'm sort of following the ball over the boundary line. It's a dead ball. I'm right near the fence. And I just rarely would I sort of connect with someone from the crowd, because the crowd just feels like one big organism, really.
Sure.
But I look up and I just made eye contact with this lady, 75-ish. And for some strange reason, it looked like my grandmother. And I remember just having this moment where I just went, oh, she looks like my grandmother. And as I said that, she's opened her mouth and there wasn't a lot of teeth in there. And then launched a pie. Like she's like 2 deep, just launches a pie straight over the fence, which sort of brushes my leg. And, we were playing against Tony Shaw, Darren Mullane, Dacos, etc. She was the most fearful person in that ground. There was no doubt. I wasn't going to, your courage as a comedian to actually go back and ask for the silence. I just wanted to get back out into the middle of the field where it was safe.
I mean, especially too, who knows what's in a meat pie, mate? The kind of dysentery she was throwing at you.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to step on Murph's toes, but I remember Bob Murphy told me a story where he said one of his big injuries, his knee or whatever, and he said he was getting carted off the ground, and he said a young kid screamed at him, Jesus, you have my super coach, Murphy. Yeah. And this man has just blown his knee out, and someone's like, you've just screwed up my super coach.
12 months of rehab, the whole lot. It's a passionate game. I'll throw some randoms at you.
Okay.
Donald Trump.
Oh, just I actually struggle with that, mate. I think he was a comedian's dream the first few weeks, and then you're like, oh, this is real. This is actually real. Right now, with all the protests and the movements of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matters, I actually struggle to even make it funny. It's gone beyond a joke. It's gone beyond the pale. The greatest Prime Minister Hawaii has ever seen. To be honest, throughout this pandemic, he's been quite good. Throughout the bushfires, that's probably a different story, but at least he learned.
Yeah, that's true. Mate, we get every guest to finish this sentence. Answer it any way you like. Life is ...
Life is. Mate, I don't want to sit here and espouse these things and act like this all came to my brain. It's not really original. This is my lovely partner, Nikki, was the one who taught me this. But life is a garden. It's not a building. You don't just build it and sit back and go, that's fine. It'll keep growing and keep going. You got to trim it back and keep going. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just, it doesn't stop. So there's no point in thinking it'll stop for you.
I love it.
Like I said, that's Nikki's idea. Okay, don't it comes to me on Twitter.
I don't think anyone owns an idea, so you can take that. We'll palm it off as yours now. Anyway, that's perfect.
Yes.
Hey, mate, been great to have you on the show. I think before the show, I was thinking about the importance of people right now that actually bring people together. And comedians, to me, they've always been a conduit to bring groups together. So I think now is a time for comedians. It's a time for sports people. I mean, sport's just around the corner now. Obviously the AFL kicks off, which is fantastic, but you have always brought people together through your shows, and that's something that I really admire. And I think it's incredibly important now, mate. So it's been a real privilege to have you on the show, mate.
Oh, thanks, mate. You see, when was the last time I cried? Oh, Jesus.
Gotcha.
Thanks, mate.
All good, mate. You take care.
Thanks, brother.
See you, Dave. Please remember, if you're ever in need of support, reach out to Lifeline or Beyond Blue. For more Inside Sessions, you can find us on all of the social platforms or at lifechanger.org.au. Thanks for joining us, and here's to a life well lived. I don't think I will ever know.